Welcome to Before You Vote. I'm Mike Broomhead. This CW7 special program is here to help you, the voter, understand the 2024 primary election. We'll be talking with candidates and data analysts to give you insight into who and what is on the ballot. There's been a lot of talk surrounding abortion laws in Arizona. With that comes the possibility of having you, the voter, decide the legality of abortion in Arizona. Today, we're bringing you both positions. First, a representative with Arizona for Abortion Access, talking about their fight to get a pro-choice initiative on the ballot and why they believe it would be a good option. Then we sit down with the main group against the initiative, find out why they don't agree with it and why voters should vote no. We'll be back here on Before You Vote in exactly 60 seconds. Hey, welcome back to Before You Vote. We're continuing our conversation on the topic of abortion. And joining us now is the Communication Director for Arizonans for Abortion Access, Dawn Penich. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, this is going to be a huge issue in November. Arizona has become ground zero nationally for this. Let's talk about the ballot initiative that you are proposing that's probably going to be voted on in November. What are voters going to say yes to if they vote yes?
So what's important to know about the Arizona Abortion Access Act is that it's a constitutional amendment. So that's important because when voters approve it and place it in our state constitution, that means politicians at the legislature can't go on to fiddle with it or do anything that violates what voters approved. That's really important. So what would it actually do? It will restore access to abortion rights up to the point of fetal viability. So that's the point where a physician would say this fetus could probably survive outside of the womb. So restores access up to that point and to protect the health and life of the patient if something were to come up. And so that's what it does. It's a one-page act. It's very straightforward, plain English, because we really wanted people to know that nothing is hidden, nothing is being obfuscated. This is the act, and this is what they would be voting yes on.
People opposed to this are saying it goes too far. As a matter of fact, that's part of the name of an organization. It goes too far. They're saying it goes well beyond what Roe v. Wade was. If that's not true, how are they getting it that wrong?
I'm not sure. That's one of the reasons I always encourage people. Please do look this up at the Secretary of State's website. Read it for yourself. But the premise of what we're doing is that these are personal, private health care decisions that doctors, patients, and their family should be making. And so if together a woman, her doctor, and her family decide that what's best for them is to take this abortion procedure, then we believe that we as Americans should have the right to make that decision for ourselves with our provider, not politicians in the government telling us about a situation that is very unique and which they couldn't possibly understand.
What determines viability as far as this piece of legislation goes? I don't want to get into the when does life begin debate, but according to this legislation, what determines viability, or is that determined in the legislation?
What is determined in the Arizona Abortion Access Act is that the doctor who's treating that patient should be the one to say. And so every pregnancy is different. That's why we stayed away from saying a specific number of weeks, because any woman that has been pregnant can tell you that every pregnancy is different. And so we wanted that decision to rest with the people treating that woman and with her health and her family being the deciders, not politicians in the legislature or judges on the bench.
Okay. So the pushback from the other side and having conversations with the other groups is that if there is a doctor out there that believes in late-term abortions of that nature, going deeper into a pregnancy, that they could say, I determine that this is a viable pregnancy. Is there a concern there? I'm not trying to trick you. I want to know, in this piece of, in this initiative, are the voters going to be able to know that a woman has a right to choose, but when there's a viable pregnancy, then it doesn't go beyond that. Am I asking the question the right way?
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. So it's important that this act maintains what we call the health standards and expectations and data enshrined care. So what that means is that if it wouldn't be okay for a doctor to misinterpret something in any other healthcare procedure, it's not okay here. So physicians, medical providers, nurse practitioners, they have standards of care that this act says they must maintain. They would lose their licenses. A lot of really bad things happen to providers who deceive or don't do their job well. The act maintains all of that.
When it comes to the cost of this, another concern from people on the opposite side of this are taxpayer-funded parts of this. Is any of that addressed in this at all?
No, and I've heard that one as well, and I'm not sure where that's coming from. There is no language in this act about taxpayer funds, so that's another one that I encourage people, go read it, see for yourself that there is nothing about that in this act.
Who was involved in the writing of this? Did you have involvement? Who were the people that crafted this so that it stood up to legal muster and that the people would understand it?
Sure. So it was a coalition of Arizona-based organizations, healthcare providers, OBGYN. So some of the organizations are Reproductive Freedom for All, Planned Parenthood Arizona, the ACLU, and like I said, the American College of Gynecologists, a lot of healthcare professionals, people who have been working in democratic and reproductive rights circles for a long time.
We know the legislature, it looks as if repealing and replacing the law that's in place, going back to the 1864 piece of legislation, if they were to craft something that was acceptable, do you think this would be deemed unnecessary then? Or do you think it needs to be done this way so that they cannot do anything with it in the future?
No, I think it's really important, and we hear this when we're out collecting signatures, that this is a constitutional amendment that keeps this decision-making power with patients and providers. I don't know about you, but the last thing I want is politicians, even the ones that I agree with on some things, deciding what happens in my exam room or in my home. And so this being a constitutional amendment that keeps the decision-making power with the individual, I think is the thing that we won't see any of these other efforts replicate.
Where can people go? Is there a website, or is it just go to the Secretary of State's site, or if they want to learn more about the organization or the proposal?
Yeah, they could go to ArizonaForAbortionAccess.org, and all of those words are all spelled out. So you can go, you can read it there. People can find out where they can sign petitions if they're supportive. And one thing that these petitions are circulating. This is just to put it on the ballot. And then in November, every Arizona voter will get to vote their conscience about this very private and personal decision.
I certainly always appreciate the time.
Likewise.
Big issue. Make sure you're an informed voter. We'll be back in a moment on Before You Vote. Coming up, the latest updates on the 1864 abortion ban. And later in the show, we hear a pro-life point of view about abortion. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Let's go over a couple of things that I think are going to be very important in this election cycle and things that have come up this week. A recent story has been written about people that are ready to be naturalized citizens, or at least eligible to be naturalized citizens. These are permanent residents here in the state of Arizona. Now, there's over 177,000 people that are permanent residents that are eligible to become citizens, which means they would have the right to vote in Arizona. Over 100,000 of them could actually vote in this election cycle. Now consider this. We keep talking about demographics and how the number of independent voters has increased and what it's going to do in the election cycle. That all is a big piece of it. But if you think about the presidential election in 2020 was decided by about 10,000 votes, maybe a little more than that, 100,000 new voters, or if even half of those registered to vote, and they influenced the election, what a big influence that would be. So there are certain groups that are saying we want to not only engage those people in getting registered, but we want to influence the way they vote, could really play a big role in the balance of power in the Senate with a close Senate race and who wins the presidency, because Arizona is a swing state. So that's something to keep your eye on as these groups are out there lobbying for people to get their citizenship and then to be eligible to vote and vote the way they want. The other big issue still remains in Arizona, which is the 1864 abortion law. The House of Representatives this week voted 32 to 28, meaning they got enough Republicans to cross over, +1, to reverse that. So that law is being repealed if the Senate signs on the same way it goes over to the Senate. But since the Senate has already talked about voting on this before, it looks like it may be a done deal. So it will be a repeal and a replacement. What would they come up with in a replacement? As you know, there is a ballot initiative being proposed that would alter the Constitution, that would set it in the Constitution and protect the right to abortion. Some people are against it, saying it goes too far, but others are saying it's the right thing to do. Would a piece of legislation passed by the legislature be sufficient for enough voters to affect the vote on that ballot initiative? These are all the things that are happening this week. So the repeal part of it looks like it's happening. What about the replacement piece? How will the replacement piece look? That's a part of it as well. So all these things are big issues. That's why you need to watch before you vote. We'll keep you informed throughout the entire process. Now, coming up, I sit down with a representative against Arizona's possible abortion ballot initiative. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. One of the most important topics on the ballot this year, or at least that we will be on the ballot, is the topic of abortion and rights for abortion in Arizona. We're going to talk to both sides of this issue, but right now we're talking to the It Goes Too Far campaign and Cindy Dahlgren. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me.
Explain now, let me just kind of lay this out. It's expected that there are enough signatures to get on the ballot for an initiative that would guarantee in the Constitution rights and access to abortion for women. And this campaign says that that initiative, as it's written right now, goes too far.
Right, and we landed on that name, It Goes Too Far, because this amendment, it could not go further. It really is expanding abortion regardless of the cost. So if you believe that abortion should be limited based on the age of the fetus or the development of the fetus, this amendment is not for you. If you believe that there should be safety precautions in place to protect girls and women who do get abortions, this amendment is not for you. If you believe that a medical doctor should oversee an abortion, or you believe that parents should be involved in their minor daughter getting an abortion, or you believe that taxpayers should not have to pay for someone else's abortion, then this is not for you. But if you believe in unlimited, unregulated abortion for pretty much any reason, then you're among the few that would support this.
So when you look at the options, and with the Arizona Supreme Court decision and what they did reverting back to the law that's on the books right now, given those two choices, it looks like a lot of voters are leaning toward this piece of legislation or this referendum. Do you believe that there is a better option than those two?
Well, I know that there's a better option than the amendment. So because our campaign, I have my own opinions on abortion. You have yours, they may be different. Our campaign is made up of pro-choice, pro-life, Democrats, Republicans. That's what makes up our campaign. So we differ on where we are on abortion, but we all agree on that one thing, that an unregulated, unlimited abortion amendment goes too far. So we don't take a position on either one of the bills in front of, or the laws that may come up in Arizona, but we can agree that this amendment goes too far, and we can agree that, well, polling shows that 79%, so almost 80% of voters support limits on abortion, and most do not support post-viability, late-term abortion, and that's what we will have with this amendment.
The pushback that I know you're getting on this is that what you're saying is a scare tactic, that's not what this piece says. What are some of the specifics that are in it that defend your position that it goes as far as you say it does? Okay,
well, I'm glad you asked. So I'm sure that those who wrote this amendment are aware that, you know, those stats that I just said, 80% support limits on abortion, and most do not support unlimited abortion and late-term abortion. So they don't come right out and say that. They hide the ugly parts in the vague language and the broad exemptions. So we went and we had legal analysis done to find out what this is going to mean in real life. And what we found is that voters are not being told the truth. They are not being told that they will lose their medical doctor, the required medical doctor. They will lose the safety precautions in place to protect girls and women. They will lose even informed consent. So abortionists will not have to even notify girls or women of the risks of having an abortion. And it also removes any limitation for late-term abortion. And I'll give you an example. So it says that abortion will be legal up to viability. But then it says it will be allowed after viability in the health exemption. Well, that does not mean that the woman's health is at risk. It could mean that she has anxiety or stress, or that her financial situation isn't exactly how she wants it to be, or even her family situation. So in 1973, Doe v. Bolton, a Supreme Court decision came down right with Roe v. Wade, and they ruled that the health exemption means pretty much anything that the woman and the doctor could decide was a reason. So I'm sure voters don't see that distinction, but I can guarantee you that those who wrote this abortion amendment know exactly what that exemption means.
You brought up Roe v. Wade. The other thing that we're hearing from the people that are proponents of this referendum is that what it does is it goes back to reinstating what Roe v. Wade said. And you're saying that it goes further than that.
Oh, it does go further than that. Under Roe, states could put in place safety precautions and limitations. Under this abortion amendment, those could not be put in place. There cannot be limitations in place. There cannot be safety precautions in place. Now, they pay lip service to safety by saying that, you know, any law can go into place as long as it protects the health of the woman. But then it adds another requirement. It says it can do that, but only if it does not keep the woman from getting an abortion. Well, some safety regulations necessarily get in the way and interfere with an abortion, but it's for the health and the protection of the woman. So they're clearly putting expanded abortion above the health and safety of girls and women.
You mentioned tax dollars being spent on abortion. Does this allow for it? Does it mandate that expense? How is it spelled out what's going to happen as far as the expense goes?
Okay, so it opens the door to taxpayer funding for abortion and forcing taxpayers to pay for somebody else's abortion. So it makes it a fundamental right. And then it says nothing can get in the way, can interfere or get in the way of someone getting an abortion. So the argument would be, according to the legal analysis, that not having this taxpayer funding would get in the way of that right. And it's the same thing with the, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's the same thing with the conscience rights of healthcare professionals. So it threatens their conscience rights. It threatens to force healthcare providers who don't support abortion, forcing them to be involved.
This is obviously a very, very sensitive topic, and it's one that we're going to be talking about all the way up until and past November. So I appreciate the time today in your organization and encourage people that if they want to learn more from both sides of the issue, to visit your organization and why you're fighting it. So thanks for coming down. Thanks for talking about this issue, and I look forward to seeing what happens in November.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is such an important topic. It is one that is emotional for everyone, and there's big implications across the board. Make sure you're an informed voter on this and all of the other issues, and what we're going to do with this issue is try to keep you as informed as possible. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Thank you to Dawn Penich from Arizona for Abortion Access and Cindy Dahlgren from It Goes Too Far for being a part of today's show. Now remember, if you miss an interview or you want to rewatch any of them, head over to cw7az.com and click on the Vote tab at the top of the screen. Next week, we're sitting down with the Republican candidates running for the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next Sunday right here on Before You Vote. For a list of voter resources, visit cw7arizona.com.